I didn't plan to love him. That's the lie people tell when they want forgiveness later. The truth is quieter and far more dangerous. I planned everything, but not the way you're thinking. I planned the moment I would walk into his life. I planned the way my voice would sound the first time I said his name. I planned the softness in my eyes, because softness disarms better than anger ever could. What I didn't plan was how deeply he would crawl into me, how he would become warmth, routine, home, and how loving him would start to feel like betrayal to myself. We met in Boston, the kind of city that remembers your footsteps. Old brick streets, yellow lights, coffee shops that smell like nostalgia and unfinished conversations. He was reading when I noticed him. Not scrolling, not pretending to be busy. Reading. That alone felt intimate. I remember thinking, he looks like someone who believes in endings. I sat 2 tables away on purpose. I wore cream that day. Soft fabric, bare makeup, hair loose like I had nothing to hide. He looked up. Our eyes met. And there it was. That pause. You know the one. That half second where the world leans in to listen. He smiled first. Men always do when they think they've found something gentle. Falling felt like music. We talked about nothing and everything. Books, cities, why some people leave towns like Manchester or Birmingham and never look back, why others stay and rot slowly in familiarity. He told me about his childhood in Chicago. I listened like I already knew parts of his story. I laughed at the right moments. I tilted my head when he spoke about dreams. That's the thing about listening when you already know someone's weaknesses. You know exactly where to lean. By the 3rd coffee, his voice had softened. By the 5th meeting, he was waiting for me before I arrived. And by the time autumn brushed the city, he was touching my hand like it was fragile. Our love was slow. No rushing, no claiming, just moments. His coat over my shoulders when it rained, my fingers tracing circles on his wrist while he drove through New York State late at night, headlights slicing through dark highways. He kissed like he was afraid of losing me, and I let him. I let him kiss me against door frames, in elevators, in quiet corners of bookstores in London, where we traveled one winter and pretended we were strangers falling in love for the first time. At night, he would pull me close and whisper things like, "You feel like something I waited my whole life for." I would smile into his chest and think of a playground 20 years ago, a little girl crying, a promise broken, a boy who walked away laughing, not knowing the cost would come later. I became his dream, the woman who remembered his coffee order, who listened without interrupting, who touched him like she understood where his loneliness lived. We made love slowly, the kind where time disappears, where breaths sink, where foreheads rest together after, eyes closed, hearts loud. He would tell me secrets about fear, about ambition, about how power in America felt closer than ever. I held his face and told him he was safe with me, and I meant it. That's the cruelest part. He never knew I recognized his name the first day. He never knew I'd practiced saying it out loud years before. He never knew that when he moved to Los Angeles, my stomach tightened, not from excitement, but from memory. He never knew that every kiss layered guilt on top of resolve, because revenge doesn't always begin with hate. Sometimes it begins with love so deep it scares you. The first crack came quietly, a question he asked without meaning to. "Why do you look sad sometimes, even when you're smiling?" I almost told him. I almost ruined everything. But then he kissed my forehead and said, "I just want to protect you." And I realized something terrifying. He wasn't the monster anymore. He was human, and I was already too far in. People think revenge is loud. It's not. It's soft. It's patient. It falls in love with you, and by the time you realize what it is, you're already inside it. Soon, love will twist, obsession will bloom, and the past, long buried, will start to breathe again. And when it does, someone will bleed. Not with blood, but with truth. I should have left him then. That would have been the clean ending, the moral ending, the version people clap for. But love doesn't end cleanly. Love lingers. It curls around your ribs and pretends it belongs there. And by the time you notice it's choking you, you've already learned how to breathe less. He began to orbit me, not in a possessive way, no, nothing so obvious. In the way men do when they think they've found meaning. He would pause before speaking, as if checking whether his thoughts aligned with mine. He started remembering small things I never told him mattered. The way I liked the window open at night, how silence calmed me more than music, how I flinched when people laughed too loudly. We moved apartments in San Francisco, high enough that the city looked quiet below us. He said it felt like we were floating. I said nothing, because I knew what it felt like to hover above something you once fell from. He started asking questions about my past, my childhood, my scars, and every question felt like a finger brushing against an old bruise. I answered carefully, always truth adjacent, never the full story, because the full story had teeth. At night, he would trace my spine slowly, reverently, like he was reading a language only his hands understood. He whispered, "I don't know who I was before you." And something inside me twisted, not pleasure, recognition. We traveled more. Paris, where he kissed me under street lamps like a man making a vow to the universe. Sydney, where we swam at dawn, and he said he'd never felt more alive. A quiet week in Edinburgh, where the past felt close enough to touch. Everywhere we went, he looked at me like I was the answer to a question he'd been asking his whole life, and I let him, because part of me wanted him to hurt the way I once did. Another part, the traitorous part, wanted to keep him forever. Forbidden desire isn't always sexual, it's mental. It's the way you crave someone's collapse, the way you want to be the only person they can't escape. I found myself watching him sleep, listening to his breathing, counting it. I told myself it was love, but love doesn't measure, love doesn't calculate, and I was doing both. One night he said a name, a woman's name, casual, thoughtless, a name from years ago. My chest tightened so fast it scared me. I smiled anyway, and inside my head, the little girl from the playground screamed, because that name didn't belong to a stranger. It belonged to the moment everything was taken from me, and he didn't remember. That's when the dreams started. Dreams where I was holding his heart in my hands, deciding whether to give it back. Dreams where I kissed him goodbye and woke up crying, not from sadness, but relief. I started pulling away, just enough, missing his calls, delaying my replies, and watching him unravel. He asked if I was okay. I told him, "I'm just tired," which was true. I was tired of pretending this wasn't always going to end one way. It hit me in Toronto, of all places. Cold night, hotel window, city glowing like a promise that never keeps itself. He was in the shower, and I caught my reflection in the glass. I didn't look like a woman in love. I looked like a woman waiting for the moment to stop pretending, waiting for the past to collect its debt. That's when I realized something terrifying. I wasn't doing this for revenge anymore. I was doing it because he had given me power, and power is intoxicating. When he came out, towel around his waist, smiling like the world was safe, I kissed him. Slow, deep, lingering, the kind of kiss that rewrites memory. And as I pulled away, I whispered, "Do you trust me?" He didn't hesitate. With my life. That was the moment, the exact moment, when love stopped being love and became a weapon. Soon the truth will surface, names will connect, the past will stand up and speak, and when it does, people will argue. They'll say I went too far. They'll say he didn't deserve it. They'll say love should have been enough. But love was never the question. Justice was, and chaos is coming. When the past finally spoke back, that would have been mercy, and mercy was never promised. It happened in New York City, of course. Some cities hold memory better than others. New York remembers everything. We were at a small private gathering in Manhattan. Glass walls, low lights, people laughing too loudly to hide their loneliness. He stood beside me, hand resting on my lower back, proud, protective, certain. He introduced me with a softness in his voice that made strangers smile. This is the woman I love. I smiled back, and inside my chest, something ancient stirred, because I had loved him too, just not the way he thought. Someone mentioned the past, carelessly, as people do when they believe history belongs to them. A childhood story, a school, a girl who used to be around, and suddenly the room tilted. His face changed, not recognition, but confusion, and I saw it then. He still didn't know. After all these years, he still didn't know who I was. Later that night, back at the apartment overlooking the city, I poured us drinks. My hands were steady. That surprised me. He talked about the future, marriage, children, a house somewhere quiet, maybe Vermont, maybe the English countryside, somewhere safe. I listened. Then I said his name, slowly, exactly the way it was spoken all those years ago. His smile faded. I followed with mine, my real name, the one he hadn't heard since childhood, the one he helped erase. He laughed at first, people always do. Then the questions came, the denials, the excuses, the frantic searching through memory like a man digging through rubble for something already dead. And when understanding finally landed, it was brutal, because understanding doesn't arrive gently, it crashes. I told him everything, the betrayal, the lies, the way my best friend, his best friend, chose him over truth, the way I was blamed, shamed, silenced, how my life split in two that day, how revenge didn't begin with anger, but with patience. I told him I didn't plan to fall in love. That was the one mistake I never forgave myself for. He cried, real tears, the kind people reserve for moments they cannot undo. He begged to believe he was young, ignorant, unaware, and maybe he was, but ignorance doesn't erase damage, it just delays payment. What he didn't know, what he never thought to question, was how deeply I had woven myself into his life, his business connections in California, his financial partners in London, the trust he placed in me while traveling through Australia, all of it fragile, all of it exposed. I didn't destroy him loudly, I let the truth do it. People will argue about this. They'll say, she manipulated him. Yes. She broke him. Also, yes. She loved him once. That's the part that hurts the most, because I did, and love doesn't excuse what came before. When he asked me if any of it was real, the kisses, the nights, the way I held his face when he slept, I told him the truth. Everything was real, and that was the cruelest part, because the love was real, and so was the revenge. I left before dawn, no note, no explanation. Some endings don't deserve closure. As the city awoke, I walked away lighter than I'd been in years, not healed, but free. Revenge doesn't always scream. Sometimes it whispers, sometimes it kisses you first, and sometimes it wears the face of the woman you thought you were safe with. If people blame me, let them. If they support me, let them. This story was never about approval, it was about balance, and balance has finally been restored. I know what happened to him after I left. People think I wouldn't care. They're wrong. You don't untangle yourself from someone without feeling the echo. He didn't fall apart loudly. That's important. There were no public breakdowns, no dramatic apologies, no grand speeches about regret. He stayed composed, men like him always do, but I heard the cracks anyway. I heard he still wakes up early, even when there's nowhere to go, that he keeps his phone face down now, as if silence might accuse him, that he rereads old messages, not looking for answers, but for proof that love was real. It was. That's the part that hurts him the most. He lost things slowly, not in a way anyone could point to and say, that's when it happened. Opportunities cooled, rooms felt colder, trust became conditional. The world didn't punish him, it simply stopped protecting him. I imagine him sitting alone sometimes, replaying moments he once skimmed past. My pauses, my eyes, the way I asked questions that felt casual but weren't. He probably wonders when I decided. The truth, I decided long before I loved him. Love just complicated the ending. He tells himself he was young back then, that he didn't understand. I believe him, but belief doesn't undo impact, and growth doesn't erase debt. I think he finally understands now that being kind doesn't make you innocent, that forgetting doesn't mean something didn't happen, that love doesn't protect you from the past, it only delays the moment it comes knocking. Sometimes I imagine him wanting to speak to me, not to fix things, but to be seen. I don't answer those imagined conversations, not because I'm cruel, but because silence is the only thing left that belongs to me. I didn't ruin his life. I gave it back to him, unfiltered. What he does with it is no longer my responsibility. If he ever wonders whether I loved him, I hope he knows this. I wouldn't have gone this far if he hadn't mattered, and I wouldn't have walked away if I hadn't finished. This isn't bitterness, it's closure, and it's quiet, just the way I like it. People think revenge ends with noise. It doesn't. It ends with silence. I didn't feel victorious the way stories promise. There was no rush, no laughter, no moment where I looked in the mirror and saw a monster or a hero staring back. I just felt still, like a lake after a storm passes through and leaves nothing floating on the surface anymore. I moved cities, not to run, but to breathe, somewhere quieter, somewhere with mornings that didn't carry memories in their air. I spent time walking without destination, drinking coffee slowly, letting my thoughts stretch without fear of interruption. For the first time in years, my mind wasn't rehearsing conversations that would never happen. People asked about him. I never answered. Some chapters don't need summaries. At night, when everything is quiet, I sometimes remember the way he used to look at me, like I was safety, like I was home. That memory still aches, but it doesn't control me. Pain can live inside you without owning you. I don't regret loving him. That love reminded me I was capable of softness, even after everything. And I don't regret the revenge, because closure isn't forgiveness. Sometimes closure is simply ending the cycle.